Nowhere to Call Home by Cynthia DeFelice, Chapter 22. Frankie awoke when the train began to slow. It was the second day since they'd left Grand Forks. She was pretty sure, but the nightmarish hours of Stupat's crisis had made the journey seem much longer. Before that, there had been several stops for loading and unloading, when she and Stupat had slipped out of the car for a stretch, as he liked to call their trips to the bushes, but by now she had lost track of where they were. Carefully, she slid the boxcar door open slightly so that she could read the station signs as they passed by. "Havre, Montana, Stu," she said aloud. "But I don't see any mountains. I don't see much of anything at all, just lots and lots of snow and open space." She was relieved when Stupat answered, even though his voice was weak. "I told you, the West is big, remember? But where are the Rocky Mountains? Murph said they kind of pop up out of nowhere." "We'll know when we get there, 'cause the train's gotta stop and get another engine to help push it. That's how steep and high them Rocky Mountains are." Stupat seemed to perk up just thinking about the Rockies. "Even if I'm pounding my ear like a baby, you wake me up when we get there. You promise, Blue?" "I promise." "We'll wrap ourselves up real good in these blankets, open up the door, and feast our eyes on the prettiest sight on earth, leastways, according to Murph." Stupat was well into the second bottle of medicine. After more coughing and another swig from the bottle, he fell back to sleep. Frankie lay awake, praying that Murph had been telling the truth, and the Rocky Mountains were as splendid as he'd said, and that Stupat wouldn't be disappointed. Several hours later, Frankie felt the train starting to slow down, and she nudged Stupat awake. "I think we're there, Stu. How are you feeling?" "Okay," he answered. "Open the door and let's have a glim." Frankie slid the door open a few inches and peered out. Two things happened at once. She let out an exclamation of sheer joy at the incredible beauty before her, and the little hairs on the inside of her nose froze up. "Oh, Stu," she cried. "Look!" "I would if you'd open the door so I can see something besides your backside," he answered. Frankie opened the door farther, and Stupat, sitting up now, slid forward and joined her. Holy Toledo! Stupat stared, his eyes wide, his mouth hanging open. Before them rose the mountains, covered in snow. A river cut through two ridges like a thin silver ribbon. The sky was a color of blue Frankie had never seen before, and the light sparkled on the clean white snow, making Frankie and Stupat squint and shield their eyes with their hands. But they could not tear their eyes away. It seemed to be they could see forever, from one mountain ridge to the one beyond, and to the one beyond that. Except for the lonely twin lines of railroad track, there wasn't a sign of humans had ever touched the land. A deep quiet came from the trees and the mountains. Even the train was quiet as it waited for the aid of a second engine. Frankie and Stupat looked and couldn't get enough of looking. Then they heard voices and the clang of couplings as the engine hooked onto the rear of their train. The train began to move again, slowly ascending a pass in the mountains. Frankie closed the door to a mere slit until they were away from the station, then opened it again. She and Stupat settled themselves on the floor, wrapped themselves in a cocoon of blankets, and watched the scenery go by. They passed under large shed roofs, built into the mountainside to protect the train from avalanches. The tracks followed the valley formed by another river, and as they descended from the pass, the thin silver ribbon became a wide, wild, rushing surge. Huge ice-covered boulders rose from its waters, and log jams formed from many huge trees looked like tiny piles of toothpicks, stacked in its many bends and oxbows. "Look, Stu," said Frankie, and pointed to a herd of animals in the valley. "Elk," answered Stupat, "I think." On a cliffside covered with blue-green ice, mountain goats were gathered to lick salts and minerals from the frozen runoff. Large birds soared over the peaks. Frankie recognized the white head of the bald eagle, but could only guess about the others. Clouds formed, obscuring the sun, and a gentle snowfall filled the gray sky. The snow thickened, and trees and objects appeared as ghostly blurs behind the hypnotic veil of falling flakes. Still, Frankie and Stupat stared. The endless miles of forest and mountains and sky made Frankie feel incredibly small and insignificant. At the same time, she felt some of their grandeur within herself. She didn't try to explain any of this to Stupat, as she was sure he understood. Only when the last shred of light had left the sky did they slide the door closed. They huddled next to the barrel, warming their hands. Stupat was the first to speak, and his words made Frankie grin. "That Murph knew a thing or two, eh, Blue?" "Yes, Stu. He sure did."